friends, welcome to our final video lecture in our series exploring the wisdom literature of Israel. This lecture will focus on the book of Ecclesiastes, a book that is certainly found within the wisdom tradition of Israel's sacred literature. And like the book of Job, Ecclesiastes offers us perhaps a counter narrative to the sort of normal wisdom that we found in the book of Proverbs. Remember, we started this series with Proverbs. We spent a good chunk of time in Job, and we're going to end with Ecclesiastes, with some selections from Ecclesiastes. And in many ways, Ecclesiastes, like Job, is a response or even a challenge to the normal wisdom or the traditional wisdom. In this video lecture, I want to provide a brief overview of the book of Ecclesiastes as a whole, a sort of few introductory remarks. Then I want to introduce the selections that I'm inviting you to read for our class together, for our engagement together. And then, as I am typical to do, I will offer about 4 questions for you to consider as you read and engage those selected chapters from Ecclesiastes. The book of Ecclesiastes gets its name from a Latin transcription of the Greek translation of the Hebrew word Koheleth. And so you might hear people speak of Koheleth or even the book of Koheleth, and this Hebrew word means preacher or teacher. So that the identification in Hebrew of the book as preacher or teacher comes directly from the first chapter that indicates that these are the words of the teacher or the preacher. These are the words of Koheleth, in other words. It is attributed to the son of David, probably Solomon, even though Solomon's name does not appear anywhere in the book. But the sort of attribution to Solomon makes sense when we read some parts of Ecclesiastes, because the speaker here talks about all that he's done or she's done to acquire wisdom, talks about their worldly success, the sort of building of palaces, the enjoyment of life, sort of the consolidation of power. And so we could see this as a sort of speaking in the character or certainly in the memory of Solomon, even though the name Solomon doesn't appear in the text. There is, it seems to be, a basic message maybe that holds Ecclesiastes together, and that is despite the fact that life is hard and life is characterized by toil and vanity, something I'll say more about, the author seems to say that you should take joy in what you can, take joy in the life that is in front of you, and learn to fear God. And that these two sort of responses of enjoyment and fear of God will help you sort of navigate the various seasons of life that are inevitable and unavoidable. Scholars suggest that this writing was likely written sometime between the 5th and the 3rd centuries BCE. It is, if we think about the exile as a firm date against which to compare Ecclesiastes, it seems very likely that Ecclesiastes was written after the exile, after the Israelites who had been exiled in Babylon were granted the right to return to the Holy Land by Cyrus. And so certainly that would have happened in around 539 BCE, and it seems as though Ecclesiastes is written after that period up until sometime in the 3rd century BCE. So probably before the advent of the Hellenistic world or the Hellenistic Empire, although it might have been familiar with some of those influences. And the main way that scholars date Ecclesiastes is through its grammatical features, through its use of Aramaic words or word structure, from its borrowing from other languages as well. This helps scholars who are very familiar with the sort of history of Hebrew locate it in a suggested time frame. External evidence for the dating of Ecclesiastes is much more difficult to nail down, and so this range is probably helpful. There are some clues in the book itself of some social and economic and political upheaval, and so perhaps that's the time that the writing emerged from. In terms of its literary structure, scholars have offered a variety of suggestions, but in large part, scholars struggle to discern a self-evident or uncontestable understanding of its structure. And so there are many suggestions about its literary structure. And in the HarperCollins Study Bible, one of the things that the editor of Ecclesiastes suggests is that often Ecclesiastes will introduce a theme or an idea and then drop it entirely, only to pick it up later perhaps and develop it in a different way. So it almost has a spiral effect or structure to it. There are some pretty consistent themes or ideas that are dealt with in Ecclesiastes. And probably the first and most important one is this concept of vanity. The Hebrew word here is hevel, and it can be translated as worthless or limited. It denotes this idea of air or breath, even breathiness or airiness. You'll see it translated in the NRSV often as vanity. And it really gets the message in many ways of Ecclesiastes is that all is vanity. Pursuing wisdom is vanity. Pursuing the good life is vanity. Giving yourself over to self-indulgence is vanity. Everything is vanity. That seems to be one of the clear messages of Ecclesiastes. And yet, there's a tension with that built into Ecclesiastes, because the author will say that pursuing wisdom, even if that's vanity, is better than pursuing folly. That even though life is vanity, it's important and necessary to enjoy the good of life. Even though toil is vanity, it's inevitable, and good work is worthy of our attention, even if it's not anything more than vanity. And so one of the themes, one of the tensions that you're going to see in Ecclesiastes is between this affirmation, this insistence that all is vanity, all life is vanity, all pursuits of life is vanity. And yet, within that, or in response, or sort of alongside of that affirmation, is the idea that life has meaning, or certain pursuits have meaning, or are worthy of our pursuit. And so, as you think about the content and the ideas of Ecclesiastes, you really want to pay attention to these tensions that you see as you read. There are 12 chapters of the book of Ecclesiastes. It is possible to read all 12 of these probably in a week or less. But for our purposes, I'm going to invite you to focus on 3 parts of Ecclesiastes to sort of get a feel for what Ecclesiastes is all about. First, focus on chapters 1 through 4, then on chapters 7 through 9, and then finally on the last 2 chapters, verses 11 through 12. As you read, I invite you to consider the following questions. First, what is God like according to Ecclesiastes? What is the character or nature of God according to Ecclesiastes? The second question is, what, if anything, is the nature or the quality of the human good? What is good for humans according to Ecclesiastes? A third question would be, what is the point of all of this? What is the point of life, if there is one at all, according to Ecclesiastes? And then the fourth question that I've mentioned or suggested earlier is, what tensions do you notice within the logic and the writing of Ecclesiastes itself? What tensions do you notice? So again, what is God like? What is the nature of human good? What is the point of life at all? And where do you see tensions within Ecclesiastes? I think we could certainly devote more than 1 week to the study of Ecclesiastes, but this will certainly give us a taste of what Ecclesiastes is like and how it relates to Israel's other wisdom traditions. As always, I look forward to hearing what you think, but for now, happy reading.